Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of How to Talisman. Now that we're getting into the meat of the game, this video might be a bit more interesting to people who are just generally into Talisman. But for those of you who are experienced Talisman players, there's plenty of other content on the channel you might enjoy more. In any case, let's continue our adventure against the sinister ghoul. So now you can see we have 7 strength and 7 craft. The interesting thing about that is we've actually reached a point where we can start to seriously think about moving in towards the inner ring of the board if we so desire. Because there are certain things that we can do in the inner ring, such as drawing additional cards. And because we already have the water bottle that we acquired way back in the beginning of the game, a couple of the squares that would normally be dangerous to us in the inner ring are actually going to be no big deal. So you can see here we have these 2 desert squares, which normally if you land on them you lose a life in addition to having to draw a card. But because we have the water bottle, we can actually safely land on these squares if we choose to. We actually may want to consider the possibility of moving to the inner ring at some point here, but let's not rush things because things are going pretty well for us at the moment, and we've got a pretty solid lead on the ghoul in this game so far. Let's head down to the Mystic, down here in the lower right corner in the village. We could potentially buy some armor from the blacksmith, but I don't really feel like that's necessary. Instead, we're going to visit the Mystic and try to roll a 5 to get a free point of craft, or a 6 to get a spell. Both of those would be quite good. Alright, so here's a bit of a conundrum. Right now, we are of good alignment, and that means that we can carry that spear weapon that we've been carrying around that is so effective against dragons. If we don't re-roll this die, we're going to change to evil alignment, which would mean we'd have to drop the spear that we're carrying. So I think it's going to be worth it for us to spend the point of fate to re-roll this and potentially get out of that situation. Here we roll a 4 instead, which changes us to good alignment. But since we're already good, that just keeps us the way that we are and we don't lose anything. Unfortunately, rolling a 1 there on the Mystic was the one thing that could be detrimental to us, and it's the thing that we happen to do. But those things happen sometimes. So let's head up here back towards the ruins and see if we can hit that pool of life one more time and potentially draw another card there. Also, here we have another strength creature to fight. We should be able to take them out with very little difficulty. You see now, because our stats are built up so high, even though that creature rolled a 6, we were able to roll an 11 off of a 3 on the dice roll. So we're still able to beat him handily. And that's why building up your strength and craft stats is so important, because it allows you to more easily win these battles when they do occur. So the ghoul just ran into a bit of a problem there when it hit that square, because that event card that it drew takes a life away from any evil characters in the region, and since he is of evil alignment, that was bad news for him. Let's go ahead and take our next turn and see where we want to go. I think what I may do is go to the woods for this turn, because then we can kind of hop around between the different wood squares without having to necessarily roll dice. Let's take advantage of our elf ability at this point. Some more gold. Won't complain about that. That takes us up to 5 gold, which means if we could get 1 more gold somehow, we could actually gain 2 points of strength and or craft from the instructor. The ghoul visits the graveyard to get some fate back. Let's go ahead and bounce over to this other woods with our teleport ability. And now here we have a wolf to fight. And actually now our statistics are so high in strength with the 6+2, 8 strength base that we can't possibly lose this fight. Because even if we roll a 1, we're going to do at least 9 damage, or at least 9 strength in this encounter, which means that even if the wolf rolls a 6, it's still only going to be able to do 8 total strength, which means we can actually automatically kill this creature without having to roll the dice at all. So we're going to use this auto kill option. And that's a perfect illustration of why it's so important to build those stats, because that turns situations like that into instant victories. Alright, so the ghoul just obtained a talisman, which is actually a pretty important thing to have given that we're using the base rules for the game here. The thing that's really good about having a talisman is to reach the center of the board, you have to cross this Valley of Fire square, which requires you to have a talisman to pass through to the Crown of Command, which is how you actually win the game. So we're either going to have to obtain a talisman of our own at some point, or take that talisman from the ghoul to be able to go in and win the game. But for right now, let's just go ahead and bounce back to this other forest square and pick up another item. Here we've picked up a piece of armor. And this is actually the worst piece of armor in the game because you have to roll a 6 for it to be useful. But what it does do is give us an item that we can take to the alchemist in the city and melt down for that extra piece of gold we want to be able to train ourselves up to enhance our strength and craft. So we're going to go ahead and snag that. The ghoul taking advantage of the healer to get its lives back there. I'm actually going to go ahead and roll this time just to kind of move over in this general direction. Unfortunately, that event is going to cause us to lose a turn. A storm sweeps through this region. All characters in this region must miss one turn. The storm then abates to the discard pile. Now, the good news about that is because the ghoul and I are both in the same region of the board, we're both going to lose a turn, so it's like nothing happened. Let's go ahead and roll again. Let's go ahead and get close to the alchemist up here in the city and draw another card. Here we've picked a gnome as a follower. This can actually be very helpful to us in terms of potentially winning the game. You need only roll 1 die when opening the Portal of Power by craft and 2 dice in the mines. So basically, when we go to win the game, we're not going to have to roll as many dice as we normally would because we'll have this follower with us. So we're definitely going to try to hold on to this guy for the end of the game. We also need not roll in the crags unless we wish to, but if we choose to roll, we have to accept the result. So similarly to how our innate ability allows us to optionally roll in the forest, this follower will allow us to optionally roll in the crags. The other good thing about this follower is that I can also evade creatures or characters in the hills. So all around this guy's pretty useful, and I'm pretty happy that we just picked him up. At this point, we need to consider whether or not we want to actually try to go to the witch. I think because I have 1 point of fate left, I may take that chance just because if I roll a 6 on the witch, I can get all of my fate back. We're going to take one more chance on the witch and see how that plays out. Hopefully this won't burn us too badly. So 3, we gained a strength. That's fine. I'm perfectly happy with that. We're definitely reaching the point in the game, though, where we have to be very careful about taking chances. So you can see there, the ghoul just got burned a little bit. He ended up rolling a 2 and then re-rolling the fate to get another 2 and ended up losing a life on that same card. So you can see just how dangerous the witch could be. We could have, for example, rolled a 1 and then re-rolled a 1 and been turned into a toad, lost our items, and otherwise gotten screwed by that move. So we definitely took a chance going to the witch there, but it paid off for us. But you can see how immediately following that turn, the ghoul got into trouble doing the exact same thing. So that's why that was a bit of a risk for us. Let's go ahead and move into striking distance of the city. Yeah, we got ourselves another weapon. That's cool. We'll be able to melt that down for gold if we so desire. Oh, actually, we're carrying one too many items. So remember I said you could only carry up to 4 items? So that's a bit of a problem for us. But obviously we're not going to get rid of the ring. We're not going to get rid of the spear. We will probably just ditch the sword, honestly. Now that's going to leave it there for the ghoul to potentially pick it up, but there's nothing I can really do about that, unfortunately. I'm surprised he didn't just go pick that up. But again, that's one of those cases where sometimes the AI will do things that I don't necessarily agree with or understand. Okay, so let's just go down to this wood square and see what we can see. The poltergeist. Now, normally this would be really bad, but I think it actually might end up working to our advantage here. A poltergeist has attached itself to you. You must take it as a follower. Its only effect is to slow your movement to 1 space per turn. You can only rid yourself of it by crossing the river, either by bridge, raft, or ferry. You must then discard it. So, you'll notice that just 2 squares above us is the city, and there's a little section of the river that divides the square and the city square. So we're actually only going to have to spend 2 turns moving with the poltergeist to not only get rid of it, but get to the city, which is what we were trying to do anyway. Under a lot of other circumstances, the poltergeist would be really annoying, but in this particular case, it's actually going to help us out. Oh no, the ghoul just rolled a 1, but on the re-roll it gets the 4. Good for them. So you can see now the ghoul has managed to get 6 craft, which is kind of comparable to what we have. Unfortunately, it still has that 2 strength that it started the game with, so you can see there's a major discrepancy there between those stats. Again, because we have the poltergeist, we can only move 1 square at a time, so we're going to move up here and draw a card. Here we have a place that would potentially harm us if our stats weren't so high. The marsh will remain here for the rest of the game. Whenever you land here, if your strength is less than 3, you must miss 1 turn. So this would be very bad for the ghoul to land on, not a big deal for us because our strength is so high. Here we have the shrine, which is another potentially beneficial square. You see there the ghoul just gained a life by rolling a 5 on it. And here we're going to go to the city, cross the river to get rid of our poltergeist, and go ahead and visit the alchemist. to melt down that piece of armor, which we don't really care about, and get that extra gold. If I click on my character portrait here, you can see I can expand out this view and show the trophies and the followers and the items that I'm currently carrying, as well as seeing all my stats even when it's not my turn. So you can see here I've actually managed to accumulate 6 gold, which means that I have enough to get 2 points from the instructor if I'm able to land on them. So let's go ahead and look at what we may do when we roll. I think I've pretty much pushed my luck as far as I want to push it with the witch. Really benefited pretty much every time I've landed on that square, but I think it's probably time for me to start avoiding it, honestly, given how well things have been going for me. So I'm going to bounce down here to this empty square and draw a card instead. Here we have a strength 3 creature to fight. Let's go ahead and take him out. We can auto kill strength 3 now because our strength is so high. And that's also going to give us the ability to turn in for a trophy. So here we should be able to make a nice combination. The 3, and the 2. Again, we will waste a point here to get the point for ourselves. Keep in mind you only need 7 points, but the way these cards add up, it's going to add up to 8. That does give us 9 strength, which is pretty stout. The really good thing about the Shrine card is that it doesn't really have any particular negative effects with it. You'll notice that looking at the card here, if you roll a 1, you're only ignored, but if you roll anything higher than a 1, you only gain things. There's actually really no downside to visiting the shrine, which is why we're probably going to want to head over in that direction and see if we can take advantage of it ourselves. Let's go ahead and hit these woods. A little more gold never hurts. Ghoul picks up an axe. Should be helpful for him in strength battles. Almost at the shrine. Let's go ahead and get on to the forest. I doubt we'll roll another 6 here, but let's give it a shot. Good enough. A 4 or a 5 means we're safe, so we don't have to worry about anything bad happening on this square. Ghoul visits the Mystic. Manages to pick up an extra point of craft from that visit. Good move for him. Unfortunately, this 5 is going to take us away from the shrine. Definitely don't want to visit the witch again if we can help it. Let's instead look at heading back to the woods. So this follower would be useful for the inner ring because the chasm is a square there that can cause you some problems if you have to roll on it. So having this character would make it easier for us to navigate that part of the board. Other than that, it's not really going to do much for us because it's basically duplicating the functionality of the gnome. But it's always good to have an extra follower. And since you can have as many followers as you want, there's really no downside to taking him. So I'm thinking maybe I'll teleport up to this other forest and try to get within striking distance of the instructor. Grab a card here. Oh, fantastic. Another follower. Add 1 to your strength and 1 to your craft. I like it. Now we've reached a critical milestone in the game, which is that we have 10 strength. And basically with 10 strength, plus the bonuses we have from our items, we should have more than enough to make our way into the middle ring and start wrecking some shop there. And especially given the followers that we've managed to accumulate, I think we want to seriously consider making that move to try to potentially win the game. I think what we need to do here first, though, is take another crack at getting to the instructor. I think what I'm going to do here is just burn a turn on the healer, just to keep myself close to the instructor, although the healer is not going to really do us any good because we've already got more than full lives. I just want to keep us in that area of the board. Hopefully we can roll a 2 or a 3 or something like that next turn and get us onto that instructor so we can spend some of this gold. Ghoul not having a lot of luck here versus the strength creature, because even with the axe it acquired, still only having 2 strength at this point in the game is definitely hurting its prospects. Alright, so we did get a 3. We'll go ahead and over and pick up this sword. Can always turn that into gold if we end up going to the city. Although ideally we'll roll a 1 here on the next turn and be able to go to the instructor. That amulet is a nice pickup for the ghoul. Also a good pickup for us because the holder of the amulet can't be affected by spells, but they also cannot cast spells themselves. So that basically means that we don't have to worry about the ghoul casting anything against us as long as it's holding that item. Here we have another high roll. I think what I may do is bounce over here to this side of the board and try to change things up a little bit. Okay, the raft, potentially useful. We could use that to cross over to the middle region, but I actually don't think there's any real advantage to me going in there just yet. I really want to visit the instructor first if I can. Once again, here we see the ghoul's deficiency in strength really hurting it at this point, because a lot of these creatures that are coming out are just too tough for it to deal with only 2 strength, plus the bonus from the axe. Alright, let's head over here. I would normally go to the shrine, but at this point I'm just really focused on trying to get to that instructor. So let's head over here, see if we can get close. Oh, some more gold. I will take it. Where does that put us in terms of gold? Puts us at 9, which means we can actually get 3 points of strength and or craft if we land on the instructor. That's pretty amazing. And the ghoul finally manages to win a strength fight, so that's good for him. He's clawing his way up. Ah, there's our 1. So let's go ahead and visit the instructor and then figure out how we want to divvy up this spending. So we're going to say how many points we want to spend on strength first. Now since we already have 10 strength, I'm thinking we probably don't need too much more of it. I actually may go all craft on this, and the reason is because we have that weapon, which will give us 1 additional strength in combat. But if we can get 11 craft, we will have a good chance at being able to open the door to the inner region of the board with craft. So we're going to go ahead and skip the strength and instead spend all 9 of our gold to get 3 points of craft. The upside to that is that we now have 11 craft. The downside to that is that we are going to be out of the game for the next 3 turns while we learn that craft. I'm sure the ghoul is happy to see another boar, knowing that it can probably win that fight. still not enough strength for him to actually turn in trophies, but he's whittling away at it. That potion will actually be very useful to him because he can use it to gain strength temporarily for a fight. So it might help him clean up some of those other strength cards on the outer ring of the board. Because he is evil, he gained a craft point from that evil card. And he manages to pick up some armor with his third turn. So a couple of pretty fruitful turns there for the ghoul, although I'm not terribly worried about him. He does have a fair amount of craft, but my craft is sufficiently higher that I don't need to worry about him. Even if he were to attack me with psychic combat, I'd probably still whip him. Now I think I need to focus on getting myself to the inner ring as quickly as possible. So what we're going to do is head over to the tavern and hopefully roll a 5 or a 6 there. 2, not so good. We're going to have to fight a drunken farmer, but that's okay because we can auto-kill him. The Doppelganger is an interesting card because it will fight you with however much strength you have. You can see here he's going to try to use this strength potion to boost his chances of success, but that's actually a mistake because the Doppelganger will simply match his adjusted value. Oh, that roll. Not good. Now, if he had been able to win that fight, he would have been able to gain a point of strength, which is why that was a good fight for him to take. But you can see there also his armor failed him, so he ended up losing a life and losing a point of fate on that reroll that didn't work out for him. So that was a pretty bad turn all around for the ghoul. Let's see what we have here. Yeah, let's go ahead and take that last point of life off the pool of life card. Some more gold, not that we need it at this point, but I'm not going to complain. See how he does versus the drunken farmer. Well done, ghoul. Keep that drunken farmer in his place. He's always picking fights. Alright, let's head down to the Mystic. In this case, we actually have 2 weapons. So if I do end up rolling the 1 here and going evil, I'm not going to really sweat it because I'll just drop the spear and keep the sword that I'm already carrying. Yep, and so there it happens. And actually being evil at this point might not be a terrible thing for me. And I'll tell you why. It's because if I do manage to land on the graveyard, I can get all my fate back for free. And since I already have a preponderance of lives, I'm not really worried about getting the lives from the chapel for free at this point in the game. So I did manage to lose that spear because I can't hold it with evil alignment, but let's see if we can get some free fate for ourselves. Let's check this square. Strength of 4 shouldn't be any big deal. Let's go ahead and land on that. Try to build up our strength stat. I doubt that I'll roll another 1 for my movement on the next turn, but stranger things have happened. Ooh, a craft 10 creature. That's going to be interesting. Even with 8 craft, you see he's going to have a hard time with this guy. And that was the ghoul's last life, so he has actually been eliminated from the game due to losing all of his lives. Unfortunate. The AI is now going to have to start with a brand new character at this point in the game, which means it's basically going to be impossible for him to stop me from going in and winning. And I managed to roll a 1 for the graveyard here to get my fate back. Sometimes it's good to be evil, what can I say?